Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity is off today doing work. He will be back tomorrow. Joining us instead of Jim today, Emily Jashinsky. It would be almost easier to tell you the jobs Emily doesn't have than to go through the list of the ones that she does. But she is the culture editor at the Federalist. She's the host of the Federalist Radio Hour. She's the director of the National Journalism Center. She's the host of Rising Fridays at The Hill and a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. So, Emily, how do you do all this and sleep? I don't understand.
Yeah, not too much sleep. So just light on the sleep and then heavy on the work. And that's the recipe for success.
I guess so. All right. Well, let's get to our good, bad, and crazy martinis, starting with the good. We've been talking about the leak and the Dobbs draft from Sam Alito. We assume the court is still in that at least 5 votes in favor of repealing Roe at this point. We probably would have heard otherwise if not. And the way the left is pulling their hair out, it would certainly indicate that that is the case. But this is the first time we've had a birthing person on the podcast this week to talk about it, Emily. So that's always exciting. But the good martini is actually this thread from John McCormick over at National Review Online, who not only points out just how extreme the legislation the Democrats want to pass through Congress to codify Roe v. Wade as federal law and take it out of the hands of the Supreme Court, including, of course, abortion through all 9 months and all sorts of other things. But it also points out that Susan Collins, not only is she highly unlikely to support removing the filibuster for this legislation, I don't even think she's for it, even though she seems to be pretty upset with what the court's about to do. She doesn't see any sort of religious liberty exemptions here in terms of providers and whether or not you would have to perform an abortion. She also has a big problem because it doesn't prohibit sex-based abortions or require parental or guardian notification for minors seeking an abortion, which are obviously pretty popular provisions. So what do you make of, first of all, the exposing of how radical this bill is, but the idea that Susan Collins is not about to do what the Twitter left wants her to do and kill the filibuster here?
Yeah, she absolutely is not. And we've seen that she's not particularly swayed by the pressures of reelection threats. She was also just reelected. So this is something that would, should have to deal with years later. And she, as much as anyone, knows how short political memories are. In Politico Playbook this morning, they had a really interesting report. They got some talking points from the National Republican Senatorial Committee that they sent to Republicans, basically helping guide them through this conversation about a post-Roe America. And in the Politico report, it's funny. It said Republicans are kind of counting on Democrats overplaying their hands. And the fact that this legislation exists, period, is already Democrats overplaying their hands manifest. There have been, a lot of sort of parsing of polls in recent years, but just over the past few days that show a lot of Americans actually don't understand how far Roe itself goes in leaving this up to the states, and how, radical state abortion laws can be because of Roe. And so I think the more that Democrats sort of try to fill this void that Roe will leave with their own plans, I actually think they're returning some of the momentum and some of the power in the argument back to Republicans, even in a country where the majority of people, when polled, do not support overturning Roe. Democrats are so radical on abortion. It has become so fundamental to their worldview and to their base that they really can't help but overstep on the issue. And I think we're going to see that play out over the next several months and over this election cycle.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because who's really the radical here? The ones who want to limit abortion to before the babies can feel pain, or the people like Ralph Northam or legislation over in California suggesting even if they survive an attempted abortion outside of the mother, we got to have a conversation about this. And if the California legislation is interpreted by some as being accurate, deaths by neglect after a failed abortion would not be prosecuted. That would be protected. And so the more these details get out, I think you're right. I think that folks will see which side's really the radical one here.
Ralph Northam and Andrew Cuomo, by the way, are both considered moderates in their party. So I was at Netroots Nation a few years ago reporting for the Washington Examiner, and they were proudly sort of shouting their abortions as that language goes, as the new saying on the left goes. And the more people have their cameras down at the Supreme Court, like we did a couple of nights ago, I think the more the public sees that, the less appealing the opposition to overturning Roe actually looks.
Emily, has the left always been like this, and they were just better at hiding it, or have they really, really lurched far left in a short period of time here?
Yeah, Joe Biden was the youngest senator, elected the youngest senator shortly after Roe was decided, and was firmly against Roe. And he was he talked about abortion in very different terms back then. And so, while I think each side has always had their base and radicals in their base, the sort of center of the Democratic Party has drifted to be aligned with the radicals of their base on the abortion issue. And I think Roe actually induced a lot of that shift. So no, they haven't always been like this. You had the safe, legal, and rare language very popular on the left for a long, long time. And now I was just reading an op-ed the other day that was lamenting the fact that Democrats still use the safe, legal, and rare language on the left. And in fact, they don't. They really, really don't. So you very much hear that infrequently.
Emily, let's look at a potential problem for the right on this, because I think you're right. The Democrats are probably likely to overplay their hand, especially if recent polling from Fox News is accurate, that actually a majority of Americans think that in most or all cases, abortion ought to be illegal. But you wrote for the Federalist today about the barstool conservatives. And essentially, this is part of the big Trump coalition, the people who didn't usually vote Republican, but they did because of Donald Trump. And they got to voting on the right for reasons other than social issues. And so you specifically point out Dave Portnoy saying, if this is going to be the linchpin issue of the election, I got to trend Democrat. And there are other certain factions certainly that have joined this coalition over the past several years that didn't do so because the GOP agreed with them on social issues. So if this does become a dominant issue, and the Democrats will certainly try to make it that way, how badly could it splinter this coalition? Or does the overall government overreach, whether it's on COVID restrictions, whether it's on disinformation governance boards and all sorts of other things, inflation, whatever the other issues are this year, supersede that in the end?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because the way voters prioritize different issues, abortion is not usually at the top for most voters. They don't usually say they're going to vote for a Democrat or a Republican because of their stance specifically on abortion. Usually when you poll, it's down towards the end of the list in terms of people's priorities. That said, if Republicans spend the next several months in this election cycle defending their opposition to abortion and defending the overturning of Roe, it kind of, for those barstool voters, as Matthew Walther sort of coined the term in an essay in The Week in 2021, for those barstool voters, it is going to, take that sort of Trumpian facade off of the modern Republican Party, and it'll just sort of confirm their stereotypes from the 2012 War on Women narrative that Republicans are just all religious freaks in their minds because they've grown up in this Roe culture and the sort of sexual libertine culture. So I do think it can be powerful in, taking for some of those voters, seeing the Republican Party as how they saw it before Trump, and not sort of wanting to associate with the religious freaks as somebody like Portnoy might see it. So even if it's not on the top of the mind for a lot of voters, I can see it sort of becoming a thing that makes it once again very uncool to associate with the Republican Party in the way it was before Trump. So I don't know what effect it'll have, but I do think it's fair that coalition has to say it's always been very fragile to begin with.
Yeah, it's interesting how long a coalition could stick around once the person that put the coalition together isn't necessarily on the ballot. But he might be in 2024. We don't know that yet, so we'll find out. But in the meantime, a lot to take in, and a lot of long days, as Emily mentioned at the beginning, with all the different professional hats that she wears. You want to be comfortable while you do that, and to do that, you can do no better than being in your X chair. Now, Jim is not here today, and Jim is the one who got to try out the X chair, and he still has the X chair in his office. I've tried it out once at his house, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty jealous that he got to actually try that product out. But no one can actually tell you how good the product is like Jim. So here's how he puts it.
From the first moment I sat in my X chair, my body immediately said, now this is what a real office chair is supposed to feel like. I never actually looked forward to sitting in my office until I got my X chair. Now, can your current office chair give you a massage while you're working? My X chair can do that. Can your current office chair heat up or cool down? My X chair can do that too. It's all in the Elegance massage and temperature regulation, which is exclusively designed and made for X chair. And once you feel the customized support of the X chair's patented dynamic variable lumbar, or DVL, you'll never be happy in any other chair again. High performance, quality engineering, extreme comfort. These are all the reasons I love my X chair. Now I can't wait to be at work. And sometimes, even if I'm not working, I just sit in my X chair just to get that feeling. Take my advice. Try the X chair for yourself, risk-free for 30 days. Once you realize how much better your chair should be, you'll never go back. I promise.
Go to xchairmartini.com now. That's the letter xchair, martini.com, or call 1-844-4XChair for $100 off your order. XChair has a 30-day guarantee of complete comfort, and you can finance your purchase for as little as $30 per month. One more time, xchairmartini.com. All right, Emily, on to our bad martini now. And if there's anything that we know about Washington, and there are lots of things we know about Washington, it's that people have a really hard time keeping their mouths shut, especially when they should. And that includes people in the national security community. The New York Times is quoting people, unnamed of course, about how the U.S. is targeting Russian generals. This couldn't possibly go bad. The Times says the United States has provided intelligence about Russian units that has allowed Ukrainians to target and kill many of the Russian generals who have died in action in the Ukraine war, according to senior American officials. Aren't they always the ones? Ukrainian officials said they have killed approximately 12 generals on the front lines, a number that has astonished military analysts. The targeting help is part of a classified effort, well, not anymore, by the Biden administration to provide real-time battlefield intelligence to Ukraine. That intelligence also includes anticipated Russian troop movements gleaned from recent American assessments of Moscow's secret battle plan for the fighting in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine. Officials declined to specify how many generals had been killed as a result of U.S. assistance. The U.S. has focused on providing the location and other details about the Russians' military mobile headquarters, which relocate frequently. So, Emily, you know, there's the saying back in World War II that loose lips sink ships. I don't know what these people think they're accomplishing by telling the world that they're doing this. I mean, I'm not surprised that we're doing it, but by admitting it, it can cause a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting here. Whether this was a leak or whether this was sort of past, whether someone actually caught this story at the Times is one question, but they're confirming the story here. And what that suggests to me is the Biden administration, or it might be a sort of matter of actually bragging about saying, as part of their strategy that, this report is going to show up in the New York Times, that this is what we're doing. And what that marks is an escalation, period. And so whether it's a good escalation, as the Biden administration seems to think it would be, given the fact that it's confirmed, or a bad escalation, how this is interpreted by Russia, we're just sort of on this slow march to a dangerous escalation. And we don't know what's going to push us over that threshold. So there's just, a lot of need to play this very carefully, and confirming a report like this with senior unnamed sources doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence that they're taking that as seriously as perhaps they should be.
No, I think you're exactly right about that. As a member of the media, you like the fact that you can get people to talk. But there's also the national security considerations here, like you said. And as Jim has pointed out many times on the podcast, we want Ukraine to do well, but we also have to be concerned about what Putin might do if he's continually frustrated and eventually desperate to make the progress he thought was going to be so easy to do. So Washington's always been bad at keeping mouth shut, but especially in situations like this, it's important. And once again, we apparently have people who just can't do that.
No, I mean, you're right. Like in the media, it's wonderful when things leak as a reporter, as a journalist, because you want to you want to hold the administration towards transparency. But on the side of the administration, you do have a duty to retain confidential information and not leak it. But I think this was probably strategic, and I'm not sure it's a smart strategy.
Get into that just a little bit more. Why would they want the public to know this, or and eventually the Russians, obviously, because they probably already knew it, but now it's official?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's probably particularly for the Russians to see that our very high level intelligence is being used. That number of generals is stunning. That 12 number of generals is very, very high. Those are obviously high value targets in the sort of parlance of war. And to brag about that in the New York Times, I think it is really directed at the Russians in particular to say the level of opposition you're getting from the United States is now sharing high-level intelligence that is devastating the leadership of Russian forces, and to say, like, listen, we are involved to this degree. And so obviously, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and none of us really do because this is now public. But that seems like it really does seem like an escalation in sort of getting Russia to turn up the heat in their invasion and their assault on Ukraine. And I don't know that that'll be constructive.
My gut reaction to this, Emily, is, man, I hope they know what they're doing. But if you look at any other issue this administration has focused on, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence that they actually know what they're doing, from economy to border to everything else. Yeah, Afghanistan, fill in the blank, just about every issue. And the American people see that. You look at the polls, I'm not sure Biden is above 40% on any particular issue. But that makes me even more nervous about what could happen here. But in the meantime, don't forget about the phenomenal deals you can get over at MyPillow. And right now they've got their buy one, get one extravaganza, really high quality products that I love. You got the sheets, the towels, the pillows themselves, of course. And now you can buy one, get one free. MyPillow bed sheets as low as $59.98. The MyPillows as low as $49.98. And the roll and go anywhere MyPillows is just $29.98. Buy one, get one free. And the new product here that we're highlighting this week is the Roll and Go Anywhere MyPillow.
You can use it on your couch. You can use it on your recliner. You can use it in your car. So as you can tell from that, it's versatile enough to take just about anywhere, whether you're on vacation or you're in the car. It's available in multiple colors and patterns. It's also, and this is important, machine washable and dryable, especially for those of you with kids. And it comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. Sounds like a great deal.
Yeah, it does. And if you're ever taking a pillow in the car, you know you're going to need to wash it when you're done with that on a trip. It's buy one, get one extravaganza at mypillow.com/martini. Bed sheets and MyPillows are just the tip of the iceberg. Find the full list of BOGO offers by visiting mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104. Stock up with buy one, get one free savings today and get Mike's book free with any purchase. mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104. One more time, mypillow.com/martini. All right, on to the crazy martini now, Emily. And while most of the media is kind of focused on one big issue at a time, or maybe one or two, right now it's Roe v. Wade, Ukraine war. Who knows what else will pop up when the media gets bored with the issue that's currently on the front page. But one that we're constantly seeing the drumbeat on is the green agenda. And no matter what's going on, whether it's super high gas prices or the cost of food at the grocery store, or whatever the issue is, this is a great opportunity. Never let a crisis go to waste. And so the Biden administration is trying to make that happen. Some of it they want to do through legislation. That plan isn't working out too well, but they also are going to go through the regulatory path. Gina McCarthy used to run the EPA for Barack Obama. She's now a climate advisor to Joe Biden. And she gave a speech at Tufts University. And in this excerpt, you'll see that they have very big plans for your kitchen and for the airlines.
We have solutions that can deliver. We're actually going to do 100 rules this year alone on appliances, just like you asked. We are developing partnerships on how we work together for new building standards, even for sustainable airlines. Who'd have thunk that they'd be all in, but they better be or they're going to be out of here.
So there you go, Emily. I mean, they have made little secret about their ambition on the green agenda. They think that by forcing prices higher and making things more scarce that we're used to, like fossil fuels and so forth, that we're going to like that. I'm not sure that that's going to be the result of this, but they keep pushing forward anyway. So what do you make of McCarthy and this constant drumbeat to get off of fossil fuels and towards the left's green agenda?
It's so absurd. And I think we take for granted sometimes because we're so conditioned to expect this from the regulatory state. But the idea that these regulations are just being passed down by unelected bureaucrats is insane. I mean, it is truly insane how sweeping these types of regulations are, how they affect businesses that are already actually in the literal business of making products efficient for their customers. And by the way, it's the same thing. We hear this over and over again. Bitcoin's better for the environment. Teslas are better for the environment. Well, you're also mining all kinds of different minerals. You have to use electricity to mine Bitcoin. There are always environmental costs. In some cases, they're actually higher. And so to just sort of act as though this is going to be dramatic, this is going to be what pushes us over the edge in the fight against climate change, that consumers need to make these sacrifices and quality businesses need to make these sacrifices as the government tells them to, rather than sort of adjusting to the market, which, by the way, the government already says some of these companies are doing to sort of just pass these regulations down from Washington. It's absurd. It is completely absurd. It's really honestly not good for anybody.
Absolutely right. And just more burden on business right now. Of course, the left doesn't care about how many burdens that the businesses have on them. But if you want to grow the economy, you want to increase productivity, this is not going to help. I don't know what your basic philosophy is on the climate debate, Emily. Mine boils down to 3 points. Number one, the projections always seem to be wrong. The alarmist projections never seem to happen, certainly in the time frame that they say. Then the question is whether their proposed solutions would actually work, and they seem to be kind of nebulous about that. And then the third question is, well, what do we have to do to get to your solutions? And that seems to be giving up a lot of things in terms of freedom and a lot of costs going up. So I'm not sure where the upside is here.
Well, yeah. And what we have to do to get to their end goal is suddenly have massive cooperation with a abusive human rights state like China. We have to sort of bring India in the fold and cut their emissions dramatically, significantly in ways that are almost inconceivable. And the same goes for China. And so they're asking American consumers and American businesses to make these sacrifices for less efficient products that cost more money and being subservient to the government's demands on the business side, when in fact we actually have very little reason to believe that in the long game, these sacrifices are actually going to be part of a real serious global effort that could actually cut the emissions they want to cut, the level of emissions they want to cut to that scale.
If you're going to sacrifice, you would like to see some accomplishment, and that doesn't seem to be on the horizon either. So, Emily, great to have you with us today. Thanks for filling in for Jim, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Emily Jashinsky, culture editor over at The Federalist. She's also the host of the Federalist Radio Hour, also the host of Rising Fridays at The Hill, director of the National Journalism Center, senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. Do subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thank you so much for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They're a huge help to us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow all of us on Twitter. Emily is at Emily Jashinsky. Jim is at Jim Garrity. And I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Thursday. And please join us on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
Hi everyone, Steve Hilton here. You may have seen my show The Next Revolution on Fox News, but did you know about my podcast, The Daily California? I live in California and I suffer, along with millions of people, the consequences of the madness, the left-wing madness that is shoved down our throats by the Democrats who've been in power, unchallenged pretty much for so long here. We're fighting back. It's called The Daily California. It's important that we get as many people joining us as possible because, as you know, what starts in California doesn't end there. It can infect the whole country. So join us at The Daily California to help fight back. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts.